everyone, thanks for joining me again. In today's video we're going to take a look at PowerShell loops. In particular we'll look at the do until and the do while loops, and the for each and the ForEach-Object loops. And before we delve into what each of those loops are and how they work and provide some examples, let's just take a step back a little bit. When we're talking about PowerShell loops, what do we actually mean? What is a loop? Well, quite simply, a loop in PowerShell is a way of repeating part or even all of our script when we're iterating through it. And there can be several reasons we might want to do that. So a good example might be that we're asking the user running our script for some input, and they provide us that input, and we then validate what they give us against a set of parameters, for example. And if what they've given us isn't to our satisfaction, we ask them for the information again and again, we validate and so on and so forth, and we keep asking until we get an answer that we consider valid. Let me just give you a silly example. If I said give me a number between 1 and 10 and you said 200, I might then say, okay, I can't do what I wanted to do with that, can you try again, give me a number between 1 and 10, and then you say sausage and I say, yeah, you're not really kind of getting this, can I have a number between 1 and 10 please, -6. Okay, I think I'll go and ask someone else. But you get the kind of the point. You keep repeating the question until you get something that matches the validation that you're looking for. Okay, so we now understand what a loop is and a couple of the reasons perhaps that we might want to use a loop. So the next question is, why are there different types of loop? And the best way to answer that would be to demonstrate a few examples as to what each of the loops do. So we'll start off with the do until and the do while, and we'll take those two loops together. And the reason is because they're really a different side of the same coin. It's all down to the syntax you use when you're compiling your loops. I'll give you kind of a real world example. You could, for example, say climb a ladder until you run out of rungs, because of course if you keep trying to climb when you run out of rungs, you're going to fall off the end of the ladder. So that's a real world do until situation. Another way of looking at it is you could say climb the ladder whilst there are still rungs in front of you, and it's obviously getting at the same thing, but one is keep going until a certain condition is met, and the other one is keep going whilst a condition is true. So I'll give you an example, I'll write a script, I'll fast forward it all, and we'll come back in just a minute and I'll talk you through it. Alrighty, so we've got our script. I'll talk you through what I've done. I've actually created both a do while and a do until loop. I've nested one inside the other. That's something else important to mention about loops. You can nest a loop inside another loop, so you'll see why I've done that when I run through it. Let's just work through the script and I'll explain what I've done. So we'll minimize the bit where it says do, and you can see it then concatenates it down, and we can see do something while output number is less than maximum number. So we've specified maximum number up here, we've just given arbitrary number to an arbitrary variable. The number 37 is what we're calling maximum number, and we're going to keep looping through doing things whilst another variable called output number is less than that value 37 that we specified. So let's have a look to see where we're calling the output number. So I'll expand the script, and we can see, first of all, we'll go line by line. So we clear the lines, absolutely fine, we get that, no elaboration needed there. We then get two random numbers, and each random number is going to be a number between 1 and 10. And then we're going to go through and do another loop. So if I minimize the part of the script again that's got the loop, we can see this one is do something until something else, and we can see there's something else. So we're going to keep doing everything inside the script until another variable called action is equal to the letter M or the variable action is equal to the letter A. So let's expand that and have a look a bit further. So here we go, we're declaring the variable action, and the variable action is read host, i.e. we're going to be asking the person running the script to provide some input. We've given it a little bit of text here to give you some context. Shall I multiply M or add A? So we call the variable action and we're asking the user to input something. Whatever they input, we're going to check. We're going to say, does action equal the letter M? Because if it does, then what we're actually going to do is we're going to set this variable output number, which, if you remember, is part of the condition of the while loop. So we're going to set the variable output number to the first random number multiplied by the second one, and just for clarity we're going to write the word multiplying. If the input is the letter A, then instead we're going to set that value to be the first random number plus the second random number, and again we'll write the word adding. We're going to do these three things. We're going to ask the user for some input, we're going to check that input against whether it's the letter M or not, we're then going to check to see if it's the letter A or not, and then the last thing we're going to do, we're going to have a look at our loop. So you can see here that if action is equal to M or action is equal to A, then at that point our loop's going to terminate, we're going to stop there. So let's break that down into plain English. It's the example that I gave early on in the video. We're going to keep asking the same question until the answer that's given to us matches what we're after for validation. So you can hopefully see, and we'll run it and we'll demonstrate it, that we can keep looping that, forever and ever and ever until we provide the valid input. However, once the valid input is provided, we can then go down to the next part of the script, which is going to simply write out each of those numbers. And then, obviously earlier on we multiplied or we added those two numbers together, those two random numbers. So now we're going to do some more validation. So if the output number is less than the maximum number we specified up here, then we're going to write the number and we're going to type it out in green. However, if it isn't, if the number is greater than or equal to the maximum number, we're going to still write the number out. We're going to write it out in red. We are going to pause just so that every time we run through we can see what's happening, because of course the next part of the loop, when it goes all the way back round to this top, is to clear the screen. So if we didn't have that pause, we would see it flicking round over and over and over again. We wouldn't necessarily see what we're actually getting output because the screen keeps clearing. So we go through one loop and we get to the bottom, we've done our comparison and we then pause. And the while loop, so again, like the do until, do while, so whilst the output number is less than the maximum number, so whatever number we've just got, whilst it's less than 37, we can keep looping. We'll go again and again and again. As soon as we get to the number 37, or more than the number 37, well, we're going to have to stop. So let's run it, let's have a look, let's see what happens. So multiply or add. Well, let's type in add. So two random numbers, 7 and 1, we got 8, and it's typed it in green because it's less than 37. Let's type in M. So we've got 36, still less than 37, so green. Let's type in the letter J. Well, that's neither of those things. So again, we're asked again. Okay, let's try W. Nope. Let's try G. Nope. We definitely have to give it the letter A or the letter M. We'll try M again. And this time we get 12. And you can see if I keep going, eventually we get two numbers that when multiplied together are more than the maximum number, and therefore the script stops. So there we go. That is how do until and do while work. And whereas that might not be the most practical example in real life for things that you might be scripting, hopefully it gives you a good enough understanding that you can apply it to things in real world settings. So what I'll do is I'll clear that script and I'll write a new one that uses a for each loop, and then I'll take you through how that's working. Okay, so we're back again. I think this one's going to be quite a simple script to explain, but I'll take you through it. So first of all, we're going to create a new variable called directory listing, and that variable is going to be made up of the contents of what we get from running a get child item against a directory c:/test. We're then going to create a counter variable and assign it the value 1, and then we're just going to clear the screen and start our script. So we're going to run our for each loop. So the first thing we're doing is creating our loop, and we've declared a variable directory item. Now directory item obviously that doesn't exist until that point. Directory listing does, and what you can see is I've put for each directory item in directory listing, and then we go on to explain what we're doing. So the syntax is you take your variable or array, whatever you have, and if there are multiple items in there, you give another variable, you declare a variable to mean the individual line item that you're on as you iterate through it. So I've called it directory item. You can call it whatever you want. I could say for each banana, it really doesn't matter. However, where it matters is for your own sanity and for anyone else reading through your script. I've seen an awful lot of scripts online where, especially people that are a bit more advanced using PowerShell, and they write things very, very shorthand. So for example, we could say for each I in D, we could call directory listing D. And that's great, there's nothing wrong with that, except if you've got quite a complex script, at some point you're going to be reading a couple of lines of your script and saying, I can see I'm doing something with I, what was I again? Whereas if we know that we're using the variable directory item, when you get to something further down in a complex script and you can see you're calling directory item, very quickly you can say, yes, I remember, directory item is the particular item that we're on inside the directory listing variable. And again, I've given the variable a sensible name, directory listing. I could call it Kevin. It really doesn't matter. It only matters from the perspective of readability. So again, let's kind of iterate through. So what we're saying is we've got this collection of objects, which is our directory listing, and we want to do something with each one of them. So with each one of them, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to write the item.name. So that's going to work because each item has the .name property. So we're going to write each of those out. We're not going to have a new line, and then we're going to write the value of the counter, which is at the moment 1. I'm going to say it's 1 of, and then we're actually going to count the entire the collection, so all the items in there. So if there's 42 items in that directory, then of course it's going to be 1 of 42 to 42, so on and so forth. And then we're going to increment the counter. So let's run that script and see what happens. Well, we've got 8 items in our directory listing, and you can see again it's looped, so it's done exactly what we wanted it to. For every single item that it found, we've got the name of the file, and then next to it the count that it's on and how many files we have in total. Obviously I can change this from name to full name. Let's do that, full name. Let's run that again. And perhaps what we want to do is we'll put the foreground colour as yellow. Let's run that again. So again, the for each loop is very versatile. It's probably the type of loop I use mostly in my scripts more than ForEach-Object and more than the do until and the do while. It's a great way of iterating through things. I think the important thing to state with the for each loop is before you loop through the items, you have to have aggregated all those items first. So if, for example, I wanted to get a directory listing of my C drive, then and recurse through, before I get to this for each, I'm actually going to have to compile this list of what could be, for argument's sake, 1 million files. So we're going to get a list of 1,000,000 files, which might take a period of time, and then for each of those 1,000,000 files we're going to do something, we're going to loop through, and actually that takes up more resource and more memory than using a ForEach-Object loop, which we'll come on to now. The ForEach-Object loop allows you to recurse through things at the pipeline, so I can actually just modify this script now and make it much more simple, and you'll see what I mean. So there we go. I've modified the loop. It's maybe not going to be as pretty, it won't have the counter, but what this loop's going to do is, again, it will still write out the full name of each item, but you can see the syntax is a bit different. So first of all, I'm just running a command, and then from that command I'm piping out to the pipeline what we want to do. And what we're saying is, for each of the items that get returned to us, we want to write to host, write to the screen. $_ means the current item that we're iterating through and its full name. So we don't need to declare any variables. All we actually need to do is just say, look, I'm going to ask you to go through and get a directory listings. Oh, and by the way, as you go through each item in that directory list, I want you to do something before you go to the next item in the list. So if we run this one, again, we can see we've asked it for the full name, we've just got those items there. It's a much faster, much less memory intensive way of looping through things. Great example. So we can see what's in there. Perhaps what I've done is created a number of log files mistakenly, and I want to remove them. So what I'd like to do is say, scan through my entire directory listing, and for every item check to see what the date stamp is and whether or not it's a log file, and remove the item. I'll do something quite quick here. We'll just do something more simplistic. What we'll say is we'll write host full name, and we'll also say if the item's full name matches file or picture, we'll remove it. So let's do that. Okay, so we'll run that again. You'll notice that I've used -what if against the remove item object. So it's not actually going to remove the items, it's going to say, well, what would you do? Give me a hypothetical, what are you going to do if I run this command? And we'll see what happens there. So there we go. So it's going to get all the items, and every single one that it goes through, before it goes to the next one, it's going to pipe out to this ForEach-Object loop and say, right, loop through, do this thing for me. And what I want you to do is write the name of the file, and then if the file name matches FI in this case, so for the word file, could put anything, let's put ICT, which is in picture. There you go, now it's a different set. So if it matches that text phrase, I want you to remove the item that you're on full name. So the reason I said full name is because if I said remove the item just by its name, I think it would fail. We can kind of demonstrate that. There we go. We get a load of errors because I'm currently at the C prompt, so running it there, I've not given it the full path, so it assumes I mean C:/ in this case picture 4 BMP doesn't exist, therefore errors. So we'll change that back to full name. We'll run that again, and yeah, so we can see that running it at the pipeline, it's very quick, just because it doesn't have to kind of set up that variable, hold perhaps 1,000,000 items. If when we recurse through in our get child item we had 1,000,000 objects, all it's doing is saying, okay, I'm going to issue you a command, and when you run that command, rather than doing everything in one go, as soon as you've done the first bit, push that out to the pipeline, do something else for me. As soon as you've done the next bit, and the next one, and so on. So there we go. That's a brief explanation of common loops that you'll come across in PowerShell, why you might use them and how you can use them. Hopefully you guys have found that informative and useful, and if you like the video, really appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up, like, and of course if you're not a subscriber yet but you'd like to see some more content from me, it'd be great if you can click the subscribe button. Thank you all very much for watching. Ta-ta for now.